Hello, how are you guys doing tonight? My name is Brant Hunt. I'm going to be reading another chapter of Dr. John Coleman, who at one time worked for Tavistock and then had the gumption and the guts to expose it for what it really is. It's a group of what I call mass brainwashing, or mind control would be a better word, of the public, which I've already gone through, with propaganda, which is another form of what I would call controlling people or brainwashing them to buy certain things. You need this because it'll make you look better, whatever. But this is a different type of brainwashing here because it has to do with our freedom in a much deeper way. So I'm going to be reading chapter 6 of his book, and the name of the name of the chapter is Tavistock and Operation Research: The Undeclared War. So let me explain what's happening here so you can understand and have a good foundation. Tavistock is used against Americans. It's used against our government. It's used in what Britain wants us to do for them. You see, Britain itself is no longer a world power, so to speak. It's dependent upon the United States as stepsister, so to speak, and it wants to use us to take and use control of the world, so to speak. Britain, you have to ask yourself this question many times. Why is the country so powerful as England has been in the past? It's an island. It's just strictly an island. Why is it so well done well in what I call a history in controlling other countries? Why is it always has been to do with money, the British East India Company, and why that they were so involved with the opium trade, you see. And I concluded the book actually by Dr. John Coleman, which is the Committee of 300, which is an excellent book to get, folks, just to sharpen your senses of what's going on. But the main man here is John Rollins Reese, and we'll probably do something on him in the near future to find out a little bit more about who he is and why he is the head of the Tavistock Institute. Um, so we'll go from there. But anyway, let's get into the book here and the chapter so we can go on here because it's actually 11:30 here on the East Coast. So this is called Tavistock and Operation Research, and it's simply called Undeclared War. And let's go into the right section here. So the founder for the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations is John Rollins Reese. Was to perfect a that would subvert and then control the thinking of human beings so that they could be channeled in any direction so desired by the Committee of 300, also known as the Olympians. So what's going on here is simply is a lot of people get into the books by either uh, just let me think of it real quick here. Let's see, it's George Orwell, 1984, and then Aldous Huxley's book. They think that that's the whole idea, which it is, but these are the working orders of how this works. This is how the gears mesh and cause this to take place in our society, you see. And by them threatening us as if you don't go along with this, such and such type of thing. Those who will actually begin to say this is not right. So anyway, also known as the Olympians. It must be said that to do this, one must introduce a automated mentality into the bulk of the target population. This is an objective with very far-reaching implications nationally and internationally. The end result of Reese's objectives, I should say, were and remain control of all human life. Now, let me say that again. The end result of Reese's objectives were and remain control of all human life, its destruction when deemed desirable, whether it be through mass genocide or mass slavery. Get that through your head, folks. We are witnessing both of it today. One is the Global 2000 genocidal plan, which calls for the deaths of more than 500 million people by the year 2010. The other is slavery by the economic means. Both systems are fully operational and working side by side in today's America. Rees began his Tavistock experiments in 1921. So this whole idea is over 100 years old, folks. We're 2023. It soon became clear to him that his system could be applied both domestically and militarily. Rees said that the solution to the problem he foresaw needed a ruthless approach without concern for religious or moral values. So this explains who this guy is. Now, interestingly, I read something about him tonight. He comes from a religious family. His dad was a Methodist preacher, but it seems to have made no difference in his life. He later added another area to his list, that of nationalism. Rees is known to have studied the work of the 9 unknown men, as referred to in 1860 by the French writer Jocolliot, spelled Jocoliot. That would be an interesting book if it's around. I doubt it is, but anyway, it'd be interesting. Among Jocoliot's remarks were that the 9 unknown men knew about the liberation of energy, the sterilization by radiation, propaganda, and psychological warfare, all which were absolutely unheard of in that century. Jocoliot said that the techniques of psychological warfare was the most dangerous of all sciences in molding mass opinion because it would enable anyone to govern the whole world. This statement was made in the year of 1860. Okay, this is like a long time ago. Okay, so that's 160 years ago, folks. When it became obvious that the British politicians were bent on solving the country's economic problems by means of another war, Rees was given 80,000 British Army recruits to use as guinea pigs. Operation Research was the name given to this project. And basically, it was designed to develop a methodology, or what we call logistics, in military management that would make the best use of limited military resources, sea, air, and land defense systems against British foreign enemies. But Britain didn't have any foreign enemies, folks. Only the ones they wanted to get rid of, you see. There wasn't any countries attacking Britain, folks. There wasn't. Same thing here in the United States. Did the Germans attack the United States? No. And in fact, if you read the details, simply the United States declares war on Japan because simply attacked at Pearl Harbor. But the Germans never attacked the United States physically, folks. And only a few days later, Roosevelt declared war on Germany. Why is that? Do you ever ask yourself why? Why is that? Makes no sense, does it? It doesn't, unless it was Britain's way of getting us involved in another world war in Europe. And that's what they're trying to do now with the whole thing in Ukraine, folks. Say no to more. We don't want any more wars, period. No wars. Thus, the original program was a military management one, but by 1946, Rees had developed Operation Research to the point that it could be applied as a civilian management program. Rees had arrived insofar as social engineering was concerned, but his work is connected or concealed in top secret files at Tavistock. Technically, the Rees Tavistock Manual, which I have a copy, is a full declaration of war against the civilian population of any targeted country. Rees said that it had to be understood that whenever any government groups, persons in position of power, use his methods without the consent of the people. This guy's a madman. This guy's a madman. It is understood by these governments or groups of people that conquest is the motive and that domestic warfare exists between them and the public. Rees discovered that with social engineering comes the greater need for information that can be rapidly collected and correlated. One of the earliest statements attributed to Rees was it's necessary to stay ahead of society and predict its moves by engineering situations. A big breakthrough for Rees and his social thinkers came with the discovery of linear programming by George B. Danzig, D-A-N-Z-I-G, in 1947. This came at a time when Reese was engaged in a war with the American nation, a war which is still ongoing, which was greatly facilitated by the invention of a transistor by Bardeen, B-R-D-E-E-N, Britain, B-R-I-T-T-A-I-N, and Shockley in 1948. Enter the Rockefellers, who gave a huge grant to Tavistock to enable Reese to press ahead with a study of the American economy using operation research methods. Simultaneously, the Rockefeller Foundation gave Harvard University a 4-year grant to create its own American economic model. The year was 1949, and Harvard pressed ahead with its own economic model based on Tavistock. The only stipulation Reese made as a condition of his cooperation with Harvard was that Tavistock methods be followed throughout. These were based upon Prudential Assurance Bombing Survey studies, which led to saturated bombing of German workers' housing as a means of bringing about the capitation of the German war machine. These methods were now ready to be applied in a civilian context. So what they did simply was they didn't attack the military objective. They went after the people, which basically have no defense. Different type of war, folks. Reese made a detailed study of American entry into World War I, which he deemed to be the beginning of the 20th century. Reese realized for Americans to be seduced away from the so-called isolationism, Americans' thinking would have to be drastically changed. And who else can we decide that? Woodrow Wilson had dragged America into European affairs in 1916 with corruption and corrupting policies. Wilson sent American forces to fight on Europe's battlefield, despite of the warnings issued by the founding fathers to stay out of foreign entanglements. The Committee of 300 was determined to keep the United States entangled in European and indeed world affairs forever after. That's why the United States is involved in NATO. That's why the United States has over 300 bases militarily across the world, folks. The United States is being used, period. And that's why we're hated by everybody, because we are forcing our way upon other countries who have very little power to fight us, that is militarily. Wilson did not change Europe, but Europe changed America, though. The banishing of power politics, which is what Wilson thought he could do, was not possible because power is politics and politics is economic power. This has been so since the earliest recording history of politics. Those are the city-states of Sumer, S-U-M-E-R, and a K of 5,000 years ago, right down to Hitler and the USSR. Economics is only an extension of a natural energy system, but that system, the elites have always said, belongs under their control. In order for an economy to be under the control of an elite body, it has to be an economy that is predictable and totally manipulable. That is what the Harvard model set out to accomplish, backed by the social dynamics of Reese operation research. Reese had discovered that to achieve total predictability in population groups, the elements of society had to be brought under control under a yoke of slavery and dispossessed of the means of discovering their predicament, so that not knowing how to unite or joint defense, they would not know where to turn for help. The Tavistock methodology at work can be found everywhere in the United States. People not knowing where to turn to understand the predicament they find themselves in turn to the worst place of all for supposedly help. That is the government. We don't need the government, folks. We don't. If we are self-governed, if we take responsibility in our lives, we don't need them. There's no use for them. Do you not understand that? Very simple. What do we need government for? Well, they tax us all the time. What purpose is it? To keep you a slave. The Harvard Economic Research Project, which began in 1948, embodied all the Reese principles, which in turn came out of the Prudential Bombing Survey and Operation Research. By joining forces, the elites felt that a means of controlling a nation's economy and the population was now available with the coming of the computer age, both a blessing and a terrible curse for mankind. All science is only a means to an end, and man is knowledge, that is information with ends and control. Who the beneficiaries of that control are was decided by the Committee of 300 and its antecedents 300 years ago. The war waged against the American people by Tavistock is now 47 years old. Well, it's not true anymore. It's more than that, folks. This is based upon the book. It shows no sign of letting up, as energy is the key to all life on this planet. Through diplomacy by deception, outright strong arm methods, the committee has gained control of most energy resources. Correct. That's why the United States buys oil from foreigners when it has oil here. Makes fucking sense, does it? Except to keep us in slavery. The committee by deception disseminately has also gained control of social energy, which is expressed in economic terms, provided that the ordinary citizens can be kept ignorant of the real economic methods of bookkeeping. Then the citizens would be doomed to lead a life of economic slavery. This is what has happened. We, the people, gave our consent to the economic controls of our lives and became slaves of the elite. As Reese once said, people who will not use their intelligence have no better right than dumb animals who have no intelligence at all. Economic slavery is essentially if good order is to be maintained and the ruling class may enjoy the fruits produced by slave labor. Reese and his team of social scientists and social engineers went to work on the American public by learning first, then understanding, and then attacking the social energy that is the economy, economics, and the mental and physical weakness of the nation. Earlier, I said that the computer is both a blessing and a curse for mankind. On the positive side, there are many emerging economies who, through the use of computers, are starting to wake up to the fact that Harvard Mallow is a blueprint for economic slavery. If this new breed of economic programmers can get its message out to the American people fast enough, a new world order of slavery can still be stopped. This is where diplomacy by deception plays such a vast role in subverting through the media, education, and influencing the way we think by distracting us with issues of absolutely no importance, while the truly important issues are glossed over. In a major policy study meeting ordered by the Committee of 300 in 1954, it was made clear to economic experts, high-ranking government officials, bankers, and leaders of commerce and industry that the war against the American people was to be stepped up. Robert McNamara was one of those who said that because peace and good order was being threatened by an out of control population, the wealth of the nation had to be moved away from the undisciplined masses into the control of the self-disciplined few. See, they are putting themselves as though they're superior to you, you see, their attitude. McNamara savagely attacked overpopulation when in reality it's not overpopulation, folks. You see, this is baloney, which he said threatened to change the world in which we live and make it ungovernable. Well, they're threatened by that because they're the few. We can begin with the most critical problems of population growth. As I pointed out elsewhere, short of nuclear war itself, it is the gravest issue that the world faces in the decades ahead. If current trends continues, the world as a whole will not reach the replacement level for fertility, in effect, average of 2 children per family until about the year 2020. That means that the world's population would finally stabilize at about 10 billion, according to that, compared with today's, based on his, 4.3. We call it stabilized, but what kind of stability would be possible? Can we assume that the levels of poverty, hunger, stress, crowding, and frustration that such a situation could cause in the developing nations, which by then would contain 9 out of 10 human beings, would be likely to assure social stability, or for that matter, military stability? So what they're saying here, what he's trying to explain simply is that there are too many people on the planet. Is what people say. But in reality, simply is no. That's not the problem. The problem is that too few people have property that should be theirs because it's endowed by God. You see, it's not coming from government. See, government's created all these problems, folks. That's what the problem is. You see, we could all get along and work together, and the problem is they want to cause black and whites to fight against each other or religions to fight against each other. When reality simply is if we just get over that and realize simply is we're all in danger here, and we don't get our act together, we're not going to be around long. You see, continue. It's not a world that any of us would want to live in, they would say. In such a world's inevitable. Anyway, I already said that. There are, of course, many ways in which the death rates can go up. Thermonuclear war would be one. War can occur very quickly and decide. Famine and disease are natural ancient checks on population growth, and neither one has disappeared from the scene. In 1979, McNamara repeated his message to the leading bankers from around the world, and Thomas Enders, a high-ranking State Department official, made the following statement. Here we go. This is in 1979 while I'm in college. There is a single theme behind all of our work. We must reduce population growth. Either they do it our way, through nice, clean methods, or they will get the kind of mess that we have in El Salvador or Iran or Beirut. See, they're threatening people. Anybody that does that, folks, they're already a bad group. Get it? They're a bad group, a group of 300. Once population control is out of control, it requires authoritarian government, even fascism, to reduce it. Civil war can help things, but it should have to be greatly expanded. To reduce population quickly, you have to pull all males into the fighting and killing significant numbers of fertile childbearing age females. Wow. You hear that? Let's do that again. To reduce population quickly, you have to pull all males into the fighting and killing significant numbers of fertile childbearing age females. So what they're doing simply is they want us to fight one another, males and females. Get it? Think about it, folks. It's very simple. The solution to the problem in the world in which the elites would not want to live is mass genocide. The Club of Rome was ordered to produce a blueprint that would wipe out 500 million people as such population. The plan was called Global 2000. It was activated by spreading the AIDS virus throughout Africa, Brazil, and in Brazil. Global 2000 was officially accepted as U.S. policy by President Jimmy Carter, another traitor. And don't, this Habitat for Humanity, that's all bullshit, folks. He just plays around, acts like he's some good guy. He's not. They're all bought, folks. The conference members agreed that the low-class element of society must be brought under total control, trained and assigned to duties as an early age, which can be accomplished by the quality of education. Of course, there is no quality education, folks, which must be the poorest of the poor. The lower classes must be trained to accept their position long before they have an opportunity to query it. Technically, children must be orphaned in daycare centers under government control. With such an initiative handicapped, the lower classes will have little hope of upward mobility away from their assigned position in lives. Man, you got to be very sick to do this. You really do. You really got to be sick. The form of slavery we have in mind is essential for good social order, peace, and tranquility. So they're coming in arbitrarily, making themselves God. That's what they're doing. They're making themselves God and saying, we are going to get rid of people, you see, because there are too many people here. Deal with this first with the poor people, you see. Or we're going to have what we call males killing females, you see. We have the resources to attack the vitality, options, and mobility of the individual and society by knowing through our social sciences, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their source of social energy, that is their income, which is what is occurring right now. Your income is not going up. Massive inflation is taking place in this country and also in the West, everywhere. You see, the physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. The general public refuses to improve its own mentality. That's bullshit, folks. That's just an excuse. It's become a herd of proliferating barbarians and blight on the face of the earth, when in reality, they are the barbarians, folks. By measuring the economic habits with which these sheep try to run from their problems and escape from reality via the medium of entertainment, it's absolutely possible applying operation research methods to predict the probable combination shocks, that is, create events which are necessary to bring about a complete control and subjection of the population by subverting the economy. This strategy includes the use of amplifiers, that is, advertising, and when we speak on television in a manner that a 10-year-old can relate to, and because of the suggestion made, that person will purchase that production. That person will purchase that production impulse the next time he comes across it in a store. The balance of power will provide the stability that the world of the 21st century is likely to achieve, rent as it will be by passionate tribalism and by such seemingly insolvable issues like that posed by the mass migration from the south to the north. And that's what's been occurring also. Countries to people moving from the south to the north, and from farm to city. There may be mass transfers of population, such as those between Greece and Turkey in the aftermath of the First World War. Really, mass murders. You see, it will be a time of troubles in need of a unifier, Alexander or Muhammad. There's another thing. They're giving quotes here, giving you ideas here, what they want to do. A great change that will come about as a result of emerging conflicts between people who live side by side, which will, by their take primacy over other conflicts, and is that political rivalry will be within regions rather than between them. This will bring about a turning back from global politics after a decade in which the U.S. and Soviet Union duel across the oceans. The powers will focus on protecting themselves against forces on the frontier or within them. The American people do not know economic science and care little about it. Hence, they are always ripe for war. They cannot avoid war, notwithstanding their religious morality, nor can they find in religion the solution to their earthly problems. They are knocked out of shape by economic experts who call shockwaves that wreck budgets and buying habits. The American public is yet to realize that we control their buying habits. There we have it. Split up nations and tribal factions, keep the populace struggling to make a living and concerned with regional conflicts so that they will never have an opportunity to get a clear view of what is going on, let alone challenge it. At the same time, bring about a drastic lowering of the world's population. We see this happening in the former Yugoslavia, where the country is being forced into small tribal entities, and we see it in America, where the average family has both parents working and yet cannot make ends meet. These parents do not have time to pay careful attention to how they are being deceived and led into economic slavery. It's all a setup. Today, we observe, if we have the time, that the United States stands at the threshold of progressive dissolution of the results of Tavistock's silent control war against the American nation. The Bush presidency was a total disaster, and the Clinton presidency will be even more of a shock. This is the way the blueprint is drawn, and we, the people, are fast losing faith in our institutions and our ability to remake America to what it was intended to be, a very far cry from what it is now. Overrun by foreign people who threaten to engulf the nation. A south-north invasion right here in our own country. Yeah, these Mexicans. True. Mexicans coming from other countries. Mainly there are Mexicans here. Have you seen it in the quote-unquote Biden administration? You know, let's just open up the borders. Let everybody come in here. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you a fucking asshole? Yes, he's a fucking asshole. Trump's no better than him, neither, folks. Trump's a little cleaner. Biden is a character in himself. But anyway, we won't go there. We have surrendered our real wealth for a promise of greater wealth instead of compensation in real terms. We are following in the rules of the Babylonian system of capitalism, which isn't capitalism at all, but an appearance of capital as typified by currency, which is in fact is negative capital. Good word. This is deceptive and destructive. The US dollar has the appearance of currency, but it is in fact a token of debt and indebtedness. Currency as we know it will be balanced by war and genocide, which is what is happening in front of our very eyes. Total goods and services is real capital, and currency can be printed up to this level, but not beyond it. Once currency is printed beyond the level of goods and services, it becomes a destructive, subtractive force. War is the only way to balance it. System by killing those creditors, which the people suddenly gave up their true value in exchange for inflated currency. Do you understand what he's saying here? You understand? He's saying something very critical. You are the creditors of this country, folks. And the only way to balance it is to get rid of you. You are the credit of this country. He's saying in a way that most people will not figure it out. He's saying it simply is that we are the creditor. We've been the creditors since 1930s. We're not the debtors, what they keep telling us, but we are the creditors. But by we going out and getting killed or whatever, which is what they're talking about, you'll never get that credit that you're given. Energy, that is economics, is the key to all earthly activities. Hence the often repeated statement I have made that all wars are economic in origin. Of course they are. The thrust of the one world government / new world order must, of necessity, be to attain a monopoly of all goods and services, raw materials, and control over the manner in which economies are taught. That is, it only in this framework can the new world order gain full control. In the United States, we are constantly helping the one world government to attain control of the world's natural resources by being tricked in giving parts of our income for that purpose. It is called foreign aid. Tavistock Operation Research Project states as follows. Our research has established that the simplest mode of gaining control of people is to keep them undisciplined and in the dark of basic system and principles while at the same time keeping them disorganized, confused, and distracted by issues which are relatively little importance. In addition to our less direct long-range penetration method, this can be accomplished by disengagement of mental activities and providing low-quality programs of public education in math, logic, system designs, and economics by discouraging technical creativity. Our mode calls for emotional stimulus, increased use of amplifiers, which induce self-indulgence, which, whether direct, that is television programs, or advertising. We at Tavistock, that's what he's saying here. Let's go back to what he's saying here. What he's saying here is similar to what this guy here is talking about, propaganda, to get people to buy stuff when they don't need it. Get it? Buy stuff. And I talked about that in my other video tonight about Apple, and other computer companies that basically they no longer keep up their software. So you have to buy another computer, you see. It's to continue the wasting. We have found at Tavistock that the best way to accomplish the goal is through unremitting and unrelenting emotional confrontation and attack. Mental rape, he calls it, through a constant barrage of sex, violence, wars, racial strife, both in the electronic and print media. This steady diet could be called mental junk food. Of primary importance is the revision of history and law and subjection of the populace to the deviant creation, thus shifting thinking from personal needs to constructive, fabricated outside priority. The general rule is that there is a profit in confusion. The greater the confusion, the greater the profit. One of the ways in which this can be accomplished is to create problems and then to offer solutions. It's essential to divide the people, keep the adults' attention away from real issues, and overcome their thinking when matters of relatively little importance. The young must be kept ignorant of mathematics, as we said earlier. The proper teaching of economics and histories must never be made available. Keep all groups so occupied with endless rounds of issues and problems that they have no time to think clearly. And here we rely on entertainment, which should not reach beyond the mental capacity of a child in the 6th grade. When government is able to seize private property without just compensation, it is certain that people are ripe for surrender and consenting to slavery and legal encroachment. Energy resources which support a primitive economy are a supply of raw materials that consent of people to labor and assume a certain position or place, level in the social structure. That is, provide labor at various levels of the structure. Each class, therefore, guarantees this level of income and hence controls the class immediately below it, thereby preserving the class structure. One of the best examples of this was found in the caste system in India, in which rigid control was exercised, ensuring that upward mobility, which could threaten the elite at the top, was constrained. This method is security, stability attained, and also a government from the top. The sovereignty of the elite is threatened when the lower classes, through communications and education, becomes informed and envisions of the power and possession of a class above them. As some of them become better educated, they seek to rise higher through a real knowledge of economic energy. This presents a real threat to the sovereignty of the elite classes, because they want to be at the top. They always want to be there. They want to take from others. They always want that. They want to be the king of the hill. It follows the rise of the lower classes must be postponed long enough for the elite classes to achieve energy, that is economic dominance, labor by consent becoming a less economic source. Until such economic dominance is achieved to the fullest extent possible, the consent of people in labor and let others handle their affairs has to be taken into account. Failure to achieve this goal would result in interference in the final transfer of energy sources, economic wealth, in the control of the elite. Until such times, it is essential to recognize that public consent is still the essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. A consent of energy release system is therefore vital. Artificial security must be provided in the absence of the mother's womb, which can take the form of withdrawal, protective devices, and shelters. Such shells, SHELLS, will provide a stable environment for stable and unstable activity, and provide a shelter for the evolutionary process of growth, that is to say, survival in a shelter that gives defensive protection against offensive activities. It applies equally to the elite and the lower classes, but there is a definite difference in the manner in which both these classes approach the solution to the problem. Our social scientists have made out a very compelling case that the reason why individuals create political structures because they have a subconscious desire to perpetrate their childhood dependency relationship. There it is, right there. You're always dependent upon government. That's why you get social programs and you continue to do that, and you never will get out of that whole perspective. They made it, that's what they're doing, and that's what they want you to be, you see. It's the simplest of terms. What the subconscious longing demand is a earthly God to eliminate risks from their lives, put food on their table, put them on the back in a comfortable way when things don't go well. The demand for earthly problem solver risk eliminator is insoluble, which has given rise to the substitute earthly God, the politician. The insatiable public demand for protection is met by promises, but the politician actually delivers little or nothing on his promises, folks. Never has. Every present inhuman is a desire to control or subdue others who disturb their daily existence. However, they are unable to cope with the moral and religious issues such actions would raise, so they give the task to professional hitmen, which we collectively call politicians. The service of politicians are engaged for a number of reasons, which in the main are listed in the following order. 1. To attain the longer for security without managing it. 2. To attain action without the need to act, and without having to give the desired action thought. 3. To avoid responsibility for their intentions. 4. To attain the benefits of reality without exerting the necessary discipline of learning. We can readily divide a nation to two subgroups, the political subnation and the docile subnation. The politicians hold quasi-military jobs, which the lowest is the police force. Next comes attorneys. You hear that? Next comes attorneys. Lawyers. The presidential level is run by the international bankers. The docile subnational finances the political machine by consent, that is to say, through taxation. The subnation remains attracted to the political subnation, the latter feeding off it and growing stronger until the day comes when it is strong enough to devour its creator, the people. When read in conjunction with the system outlined in my book called The Committee of 300, it is relatively easy to see just how far Tavistock Operation Research Project has succeeded, and nowhere more so than in the United States. Recent statistics show that 75% of the sixth grade school children were unable to pass what is called the MAPS test. The MAPS test consists of elementary simple arithmetic, which ought to tell us something. Mathematics did not come into the test at all. Cause for alarm, you be the judge. So that's just what he's sharing here, this particular chapter. This is chapter 6. And they're destroying it because they have control of all this, folks. They have control of education. The only way you can do that is to basically teach your own. Take them out of the school system. You're the parent. You're the responsible one. You're the accountable one. That's your responsibility. If you have a child and you have one in a family, that is your responsibility. It is not a government. That's not the government's responsibility, folks. Never has been. You see, it is the responsibility of the parents to train their children and to educate them. And unless you do that, this cycle continues over and over and over and over. It never stops, you see. It never gets better neither. It gets worse. So anyway, I hope that you glean some knowledge here. I hope you have eyes to see and ears to hear, because that's what I'm sharing. Is I do this because I have a love for this, but also I care about mankind, folks. I care about where we are at. That's what I'm doing. I do this for free, folks. I don't do this for charging any money. I don't get anything out of this. All I want is simply is the people to see the truth and pursue it. Make excuses and grow up, you see. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. I wish you a splendid evening, and you take care, and we'll hope to see you tomorrow. Good night.